welcome to the podcast. I'm Karen Weaver. Today we're going to look at the issue of athletics oversight at a Division III campus and also the issues of student fees and how it's impacting student debt. Most people in higher education are acutely aware of the tension that exists between those who are paying tuition and those who are setting the annual costs. In Virginia, there has been a strong desire by the legislature to hold tuition levels flat for the past several years, in response to the Commonwealth's constituents who complain quite loudly about the escalating cost to attend a state-supported institution. Over the past 20 years, the demographics of the undergraduate population across the country has continued to shift. In addition to the decline of high school graduates expected over the next 8 to 10 years, another shift has occurred. We have more women undergraduates on campus than at any other time in our history. One would think we should celebrate this achievement, and many institutions do. However, there is an underlying issue to which researchers are beginning to pay attention, that of the disproportionate attribution of women's student fees being used to support athletic programs at non-Power 5 conference schools. My colleague Jordan Techmeyer and myself have been exploring this dynamic for the last 2 years. In the course of this research, we have identified a very typical profile of an institution that uses women's students' fees to fund its men's athletics program. Typically, they are, number one, mid-sized, number two, have a full-time average undergraduate population of 16,000 students, have 9,000 of those undergraduate students be female. Number three, women make up 57% of the full-time undergraduate student population. The student fees in the athletics program account for 54% of the revenue, the total revenues that come in. Those women then pay almost $8 million in student fees. And at those typical schools spend about $6 million on women's sports, leaving $2 million to go towards the men's program. And schools that collect $2 million more in student fees from women than they need to fund then directly fund the men's programs. So what's interesting is around the time that Jordan and I were finishing up with this research, NBC News did an in-depth article that explains this dynamic perfectly. They looked at James Madison University, located in Virginia, and they are a mid-sized institution. They have approximately 18,000 students, of which 11,000 are women. The athletic department's total revenues are $51.7 million, which includes almost $39 million in student fees. If you do the math, in 2018 and 19, James Madison's athletics department received 75% of its budget from the fees assessed to the undergraduate population. As 58.5% of the undergraduate population is female, women provided almost $22.8 million of direct support to the athletics program. That equates to almost 44% of the total athletic department budget, according to EADA, or the Equity in Athletics Disclosure Act statistics. Taking it down to the student level, the editor of the James Madison University Breeze, the campus newspaper, Caitlin Waldmeyer, looked deeply into the student fees landscape across all of Virginia in August of 2019. She identified James Madison as one of the lowest funded campuses from the state across the entire Commonwealth. She interviewed Charlie King, a senior vice president of administration, about the impact. And he said, the biggest problem we've had is over the last 20 years, we've grown tremendously. And we grew during a period of time the state wasn't able to fund us like their formula said they were supposed to. And then we decided to just keep on growing and doing it ourselves. Waldmeyer told the NBC News journalist that she pays a total of $2,340 annually just for athletics. Now, she doesn't play sports. She is not an athlete on the campus. Over 4 years, and with no further increases, she will have paid $9,360 in student fees alone towards athletics. She pointed out to NBC News, for someone who doesn't care a whole lot about athletics, it seems a bit much for me to have to contribute. I have 2 jobs, I'm a full-time student, and I'm paying for athlete scholarships. To me, that hurt. She could be right. In 2018 and 19, James Madison awarded $8.8 million in athletic scholarships to both male and female athletes. And as the U.S. Department of Education's College Scorecard reports, that the average amount of debt that a James Madison graduate incurs is between $15,000 and $25,000, of which one could assume that $9,300 is part of that debt. The bottom line is that with flat or reduced tuition pricing, and with the average Division I athletics budget growing between 4 and 9% each year, the funds have to come from somewhere. At the non-Power 5 level, there aren't massive media deals on the horizon. It leaves institutions in the unenviable position of cutting the academic budget, reducing student services, or raising student fees. As our research shows, by no means should anyone imply that this problem is limited to James Madison or only to most publics in the state of Virginia. In fact, we found 41 schools where the decline in state support, along with the rise of women on campus, leads toward athletic department funding coming more and more from female undergraduates. What does this mean for student debt? Simply put, more women may be funding college athletics programs today than ever before. While the myth may still exist that male students are more supportive of students on campus by attending athletic games and activities, more female students are financially supporting the athletics budgets. It's time for colleges to be more transparent about where the money goes. Students like Caitlin Waltmeyer, who work 2 jobs, go to school full-time, and run the school newspaper, would probably agree. On today's podcast, we're joined by Dr. Larry Ward. Larry is the Vice President for Student Affairs and Dean of Students at Babson College in Massachusetts. He is what's called the Chief Student Affairs Officer, and he's also what's called the Athletic Direct Report, an important part of the NCAA structure in NCAA Division III. As part of his job at Babson, he provides strategic direction for a holistically designed student experience that supports students' academic, social, intellectual, and cultural development, as well as their personal well-being. He also provides executive leadership and oversight for a variety of on-campus programs, including athletics. He is also responsible for community standards, graduate student affairs, health and wellness, student engagement, student affairs administration, and Dean of Student Life on call, in addition to oversight of the student office. Oh, in addition, he's oversight of athletics. So I'm thrilled to have Larry join us today to talk about this important role and talk about his approach towards student-athlete wellness. Welcome, Larry. Larry, thanks so much for taking some time to join the podcast.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. When we last saw each other, you were on your way to the NCAA convention, and you hold a very unique role in the NCAA campus structure. There are 5 key NCAA positions on each campus in Division III: the president, athletics director, the faculty athletics representative, the senior women's administrator, and the athletic direct report. Yeah. Let's start with your activities at the NCAA convention.
Yeah. So, I've been an ADR now for almost 6 years. It'll be 6 years this summer. And this past January was actually my first NCAA convention. Oh. And so I spent the majority of my time in what's called the ADR Institute. Which in Division III brings together, many vice presidents and folks other than the president of a college or a university for whom athletics reports to. And so anytime you have a chance to spend quality time with a group of people who are in similar roles and facing similar challenges writ large on a college campus, it's time well spent. But the Institute takes ADRs through the challenges of understanding how to interact and build a great relationship with their athletic directors, understand the role of coaches, the Division III philosophy. Mary Beth Cooper, who's the president of Springfield College, spent some wonderful time with us. And then talking a fair amount about the student-athlete experiences and the challenges, particularly around mental health and well-being of today's student athletes. So
Mm.
a very, very interesting session, and great to be immersed in Division III athletics.
Did you find that many of your peers were in their similar position where that was their first or second year overseeing athletics as well?
I found it was a range. I think the majority of folks there were relatively new to athletics oversight.
Okay.
So, although it was my first convention, I've really felt like I had a depth of experience in managing and providing oversight for athletics in Division III than many of the folks in the room. But you find your way to add value in that group regardless of the experience.
Absolutely.
And so,
Yeah.
I didn't need to be sold on the Division III philosophy. I've been through an AD search and transitioning one AD out and a new one in. Multi-million-dollar athletic facilities, capital project, scandals involving student athletes, and difficult coaching changes. So, I've seen a lot in my almost 6 years in the role.
Give us a sense of Babson in terms of the total number of undergraduates, what percentage of the campus are athletes, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, thank you. So Babson is a private, highly selective business college in Wellesley, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston. 22 varsity sports. Our student population is just under 2,500 undergraduates, and then we've got another just under 1,000 graduate students, all enrolled in some form of business and entrepreneurship and innovation in particular is deep in our DNA and a big part of our brand. The student athlete population is roughly about 22% of the undergraduate student body are varsity athletes.
Well, you mentioned 22 varsity sports, and
Yep.
I noticed you have alpine skiing, but also let's tell our audience exactly what a vice president of student affairs at Babson oversees.
Yeah.
Athletics,
Right.
community standards,
Right.
graduate student affairs,
Right.
health and wellness, housing,
Yeah.
public safety,
Yeah.
student engagement, student affairs administration,
Yeah.
and the Dean of Student Life on-call program.
Right.
In addition, the Dean of Students Office serves as the focal point for students in crisis and other student-related emergencies. How do you balance all of this with 22 varsity sports?
I'm not sure that I do balance it, but the short answer is I have a really strong team, and no chief student affairs officer can do it by his or herself. Or their self. So my direct reports, obviously my director of athletics, who also has a dual report to the Office of Advancement. So he is the chief fundraiser for the athletic department with a dual appointment, which was a creative way to bring him in, given his background in Division I athletics. The chief of police is also a direct report of mine, along with associate deans for the wellness portfolio, the student engagement portfolio, so it's housing and student activities and community standards and so on and so forth, multicultural and identity programs.
Wow.
And then all of the infrastructure, the finance, the personnel, the communications is the administrative piece that goes into that. So you got to have a really strong team to be able to do it. And I'm really blessed with a great team. That's how I balance it.
Well, I think that's amazing. And you must come in seriously in contact with nearly every student on campus via that way.
Yeah, I do. I spend a lot of time. It's interesting because of the challenges associated just with managing campus and student life. There's a significant amount of stress. You're moving from one urgent or crisis situation, partnering with a faculty on a student issue, or strategic issue or building project. So my solace is really in athletics. I will go spend just 20 minutes sitting in women's basketball practice, or I'll go up to our upper fields and check in on our men's and women's soccer or field hockey program, or I will work out in the mornings and sometimes just go in and sit with our hockey coach. Our rink is right next to the gym where I work out. And spending time with our coaches and with our student athletes just gives me a great sense of joy and balance. And on occasion, we've got a great group of assistant coaches who have a pickup basketball game every Tuesday at noon. And so I will say the last time I played, the assistant hockey coach gave me a concussion. So I've been on the bench ever since.
Yeah, they're not going to let you back until you can play.
Yeah, and so those are the ways in which actually engaging in our student athlete experience and the coaching experience, separate from my athletic director, is really part of my own well-being and sense of balance on campus.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So shifting gears a little bit, how do you keep your president apprised of what's going on in athletics? How frequently do you meet, either formally or informally?
Specifically to discuss athletics, or just generally?
Yeah, for athletics.
Mostly informally. And so he and I will touch base, depending on the month, a couple times a month. One of the things I really like to do is give my athletic director direct visibility and access to our president. I think that's really, really important. I've got a very, very capable athletic director, and I don't feel as though all of the communication, particularly on policy issues or student athlete issues. So our AD and president have coffee together probably every other month. Which I'm incredibly supportive of. And then he and I will meet a couple times a month on a range of issues, including athletic related.
Wow, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Do you help your AD guide decision-making in hiring, budgeting, gender equity issues, student athlete welfare, facility construction, etc.?
All of the above.
Yeah.
All of the above. In fact, I wrote down, in thinking about this conversation, some of the areas of engagement, and I think you've listed the exact same 5 or 6 that I do. We work very, very closely on that. I think he relies on my thinking. We bounce a lot of ideas off of each other. Particularly around the student athlete experience. And that is both all aspects of it, on that continuum from, we've got a number of student athletes, several teams who are heading off. Our spring break is in a week or so, to, I've got a softball team going to Arizona, then going on to Hawaii. I've got our baseball team playing in Texas. Women's lacrosse is going to be in South Carolina. Tennis will be in California. We had swimming and diving in Florida over the winter break. And so these kinds of enhancement opportunities for kids who play in cold New England, to be able to put them on a plane and to experience Division III athletics at a national level, not just a regional level, is a big part of their experience, in addition to the quality of facilities that they get to play and practice in. And then on the other end of that continuum is student athletes who may find themselves in some form of trouble or jeopardy, student conduct issues. And those are issues in which my athletic director and I are very closely partnered to ensure that we get the right outcome and help put a young person on a better path.
Yeah, yeah. So think about the other campus constituencies, that student government, faculty senate, the board of trustees. Do you make presentations regularly to any of those groups? And if so, what kinds of things do you discuss?
Yeah. So I do. I spend, as the sort of face of student and campus life, in which athletics is a big part of what I think is a form of student engagement on campus. It does put me in front of the faculty to address issues of athletics. We do have a faculty athletics rep, but I think hearing from the senior executive responsible for athletics is often preferred for the faculty. I spend a lot of time with the trustees engaged in issues. Most recently, we've just completed and opened doors on a $52 million athletics and recreation facility capital project that included new campus rec facilities, renovation of our basketball and volleyball floor, team locker rooms for every varsity sport. So that was a project which I served as executive sponsor and worked very closely with our facilities trustees committee. And so really on a monthly basis, talking about that project, keeping it on track, and really making sure that the trustees weren't caught unawares on any of the issues, particularly with that level of investment. And then student government, I visited with them earlier this week, actually. So I spend regular time with the student government on issues related to athletics as well.
In Division I, it's very common for the athletic director to, let's say, go in front of a student government group if they want to ask for student fees or things like that. Do you have those kinds of discussions with student government, or is it funding is just not an issue in terms of appropriation at that level at all?
No, it is, and I often joke our student government has more money than I do to spend on the student experience. And I believe in engaging students in addressing challenges and problem solving on campus. And so usually when there is a major decision, whether athletics related or not, I like to engage our student leaders in that discussion. Not only student government, but also our student athlete advisory council as well. And I know our AD has a very good relationship with SAC, and they're a big part of us ensuring that we are incorporating the student voice in our decision making.
My last question is this. Sometimes it's a hard one, but what keeps you up at night when it comes to athletics?
Yeah. So I will tell you, student athletes' mental health and well-being. I think today, in today's day and age, if you ask a chief student affairs officer, if you ask an athletic director, their number one and perhaps number two issues will be student mental health and well-being. I don't know that I will call it a crisis, but it's as close to a daily crisis in some aspect. I think the other piece is usually around finances and revenue. In Division III, our institutions can only afford to fund athletics to a certain degree, right, in terms of the annual budget. And so finding ways to generate revenue in a situation where we don't have the benefit of television contracts or gate receipts by and large, it's a critical piece of how we run the railroad, and that includes private philanthropy as well. So that's critical. And then I would say the third issue usually deals with some form of staffing or personnel. And that can be anything from diversity, equity, inclusion. If I'm being perfectly honest, I have a very white athletic department. The majority of our coaching staff is white, and it's not reflective of our student body. Majority of our student athletes are also white as well. And so I think one of the critical ways to recruiting more athletes of color is having better representation in our coaching ranks and in our administrative ranks as well. And so those are the issues that keep me up at night related to the student athlete experience, revenue, and personnel.
I'm so glad you brought up the issue of diversity, inclusion, and equity. When I was an AD, it was easy to find plenty of people who were white, who were interested in being part-time coaches. At the time, that's what I was hiring. And it takes work to go and find people who have either, for whatever reason, either ruled themselves out because of circumstances financially or others, to help them see the path forward as to how you think you can be helpful in helping them work this out and begin their career.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think so much of the experience for an athlete is in being able to connect with that coach and also see the world through different lenses besides just your own upbringing. And so the issue of seeing other people who don't just look like you becomes a better tool for preparing them for entry into the real world. So I think we have that obligation. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, it's true. And, I've been committed to this issue for really since stepping into the role, and brought it up at the conference level. We're part of the New England Women's and Men's Athletic Conference, NUMAC, and at the national level with Louise McCleary, who's directs Division III. And so every year I speak at the Institute for Athletic Advancement, which identifies high potential coaches and younger athletic administrators of color who want to progress either to AD or to senior levels in higher ed. And so I really believe in putting my mouth and time and money, or I should say my time and money where my mouth is. And so, I go annually. I'll be there in May, teaching a workshop about how to pursue a senior level role in higher ed. And I tell you, Karen, it is as impactful for me every year as I think it is for the participants, because I share my story and they see me as a senior administrator of color walk to the front of that room. It's a powerful experience for all of us, particularly sharing some very hard truths. And so I think you have to be committed. It's important work, it's necessary work, but progress is often slow.
It is, but the arc, the arc of justice bends long and slow.
Yeah.
The opportunities that are there, and it's important at this time in higher education when we need to increase access and affordability and attract a wider range of students to our campus.
Well, I think that's right. And, at Babson, it's a highly selective institution. Our admit rate this past fall was less than 25%. So the majority of students who apply do not get in. And I think that can have consequences for having a representative student body. And so we've got to work very closely with our enrollment management folks. Athletics is not a front porch at Babson. Perhaps that's a good thing, but it does have consequences for our ability to be a more inclusive community.
Well, Larry, I really want to thank you for taking some time. I know your schedule is jammed because you're always meeting with students and to get a chance to visit with you and talk more about some of these issues and also help my listeners understand about this unique role inside of Division III.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity. Anytime I get a chance to spend time with Dr. Karen Weaver, it is a good day.
Thank you. I feel the same way. Have a good day.
Thank you.
That's a wrap. Thanks for joining us for another week of thinking about college athletics from the 30,000-foot perspective. In case this is the first time you are joining us, the podcast drops every Thursday morning. You can listen to previous guests and topics on 8 different podcasting platforms, including iTunes and Spotify. Each week, I will strive to give you a deeper understanding of the complexities of higher education and intercollegiate athletics in the 21st century. Please also join me on Forbes.com for additional content and extended analysis. Have a great week.